Now, I'm not the type of person who usually spends time on sites, but one night in July a few months ago, I not only looked at the content, but also signed up for their premium membership. I decided the $100 was money well spent. I was watching a live stream of a woman who was having sex with a very handsome, well-built guy. Something about this scene really got to me. It was a woman who went by Jenna, but I knew her real name was Kelly. Kelly was my wife. As I said earlier, the $100 was money well spent because I was able to see what was going on with my loving wife for much less than surveillance equipment or private investigators would have cost. You're probably asking yourself how I got here, what happened before that night that made me come to this site. This is a good question, and I think the most honest answer would be an accident, a rare stroke of luck that turned in my favor. It wasn't luck that my wife was having sex with some guy, but it was luck that I now knew she was cheating on me. Kelly and I have been married for over 8 years. We first met when we were in elementary school. We grew up in a small town in central Illinois. She lived in the city, and I lived in the countryside. Her father owned the largest grain silo in the area, and my father owned the largest grain farm in the area. Since our parents were in business with each other, it was natural that we would meet and go to school together and become friends. I won't bore you with stories about high school crushes, high school romances, or even college life. We were both dating other people. We weren't exclusive to each other, but deep down, I think we always knew we were meant to be together. During our 3rd year at the University of Illinois, we decided to become an exclusive couple, and some time later I proposed to her. About a year and a half later, we got married. We both earned degrees in business administration. Life was good. At least I thought she was good until that night in July. Anyway, let's continue. 3 years ago, Kelly's parents retired and moved to Phoenix, Arizona. Kelly, her sister Amber, and her 2 brothers, Tom and Carl Gentry, bought a 48% stake in the grain business from Tom Sr. He wanted to retain a majority stake for several years to support their growth with his funding. He eventually planned to reduce his stake until they owned 100% of the business. Amber is married to my friend Walter Swanson Wally, who is also a grain farmer. He runs a farm that's only a few hundred acres smaller than mine. We live quite close to each other and spend a lot of time together. Tom and Carl run the grain business together, and Kelly is their accountant. Amber also works in the plant, handling customers and processing grain sales transactions, etc. It is truly a family business with several additional employees, mainly truck drivers and grain handlers. During the peak harvest season, they hire a few temporary workers. I think that's enough background, so I'll continue with the story of how I discovered my wife was having fun with another guy on the internet and what happened after that discovery. All 4 of Gentry's children spent an enormous amount of extra time to finalize the deal to buy a stake in the grain business from their father. I wasn't very involved, but I knew they had to work hard to get the deal done. There were meetings with banks. There were meetings with the Illinois Department of Agriculture. There were meetings with insurers. They were all exhausted after the deal was completed. Luckily, this all happened in the winter, which was their slowest time of year. For me, it was after harvest, so Kelly wasn't needed on the farm as much as she would have been needed during my 2 busiest seasons. She didn't do any farm work herself, but with 200 acres of corn and soybeans, both of those times of year were extremely busy for me, and I needed Kelly to run errands for me, etc. Did you understand? Since we weren't busy, the girls Kelly and Amber decided they wanted to take a few days and go to the spa to relax and unwind. They booked a 3-day spa stay called the Princess Spa. The girls returned so relaxed and refreshed that they decided to do it again in July after the end of the planting season. The next year, they booked the weekend again. It was during this spa visit that I watched a video online. But how did I find it? Dan Marvell, depth field agent, the Illinois Department of Agriculture in our country, stopped by during his routine inspection. Kelly and I knew Dan from college, and he asked about her. I mentioned that she was on holiday at the Princess Spa. Dan looked at me curiously and said there was something strange going on there that I might be interested in checking out. He said his cousin once worked at the spa as a massage therapist and told him wild stories about what happened there. He said they even have a website with a different name. He didn't remember the exact name, but thought it was related to pleasures. I asked him what he was talking about, and he cautiously said that he didn't want to go into detail, but I should check it out. Well, you don't know me, but I love to surf the internet. I go online and look for interesting things, and sometimes I end up on websites, but usually I just look for other interesting things. So that evening, I did some digging and found Nature's Pleasures. It didn't take long before I found a live stream, and the game began. Now I can tell you everything that happened that night, but why? You already know what happened. I was hurt, cried, screamed, angry, depressed, and all the other feelings a man feels when he finds out his wife cheated on him. I soon found out that this wasn't the first time she had cheated, because the Nature's Pleasures website had an archive folder, and I was able to find videos from the previous 2 visits, as well as videos from Kelly and Amber's 2 previous nights spent there. With a premium membership, I was able to download each of the videos for an additional $20 each. I downloaded 2 videos from their first visit, 3 from their second visit, and 3 from their current visit. I downloaded a total of 8 videos worth $160. So, for a total of $260, I had all the evidence I would ever need to divorce my wife. I didn't have a plan yet for how I was going to do this, but I knew it had to start immediately. I wasn't going to wait a month or 2 weeks, or even 1 week for this to happen. As for me, the sooner we part, the better. She had sex with another man at least 8 times, and I had video proof. I made several copies of the video on DVD and hid them in a very safe place. When my father built the house, he installed a safe in the wall, accessible through a hidden panel in the built-in bookcase in the office. Once the copies were safely hidden, I removed all references to Nature's Pleasures from my computer and deleted all original files on the computer. Apart from the DVD copies, there was no longer any evidence that I had any evidence. Once all this was done, I took my cell phone and sent a message to Kelly on her cell phone. Kelly, this is Jack. I know exactly what you're doing at Princess Spa, and I have the evidence to prove it. Don't come back to the house if you decide to come back here at all. This house is no longer your home, and soon I will no longer be your husband. We're done. My lawyer will contact you in the next few days. At this time, it will be possible to arrange the transfer of your personal belongings. Apparently, Kelly turned off her cell phone and didn't receive my message until the next morning because I didn't hear anything from her that night. But early the next day, my phone started ringing. I saw from the caller ID that it was Kelly, so I didn't answer. Soon I heard her leaving me a voicemail. Jack, what do you mean, honey? I don't understand what's going on, but why are you writing such terrible things to me? Amber and I are packing now, and I'll be home in a couple of hours. I don't know what you think I did, but you're wrong. I'll talk to you when I get back, and then we can discuss this. I love you, Jack. A short time later, my phone rang again and again. I didn't answer, letting it go to voicemail. It was the same message again, almost word for word. I wondered if she had written what she was about to say. When I didn't answer that call, a text message arrived soon after. She sounded like a broken record, repeating almost verbatim what she had said in 2 voicemails. Since I didn't need to talk to her directly, I decided to send a short reply to let her know that I received her messages but chose not to talk to her. I simply wrote, I wonder if your lover knows what you are talking about, dear. If I ask him, why don't you ask him to call me and I'll ask him? As for you not being able to go back to the house, that's what I meant. Do not think you can go home, you can't. This is the end, Kelly. I didn't receive any more text messages, but later in the day, Kelly called me again. She left a message. Jack, we need to talk. I'm staying with Amber until we talk and sort out this terrible misunderstanding. Please call me on my cell phone and talk to me. This was on a Sunday afternoon, and I did not return this call. The next day, I went to my bank and arranged for a second safe in my name only. I put 1 copy of the DVD in the safe, along with the original of our prenuptial agreement. I made a copy of the prenuptial agreement for my lawyer. I was sure he had 1 copy, but didn't want to risk any problems. At the appointed time, I walked into my lawyer's office and Kelly was sitting there. When I entered, she looked up at me and I saw that she looked terrible. It was obvious that she had been crying, her hair was disheveled, and I could see the dark circles under her eyes that she gets when she doesn't get enough sleep. Kelly said to me, "Jack, we need to talk about this." I asked, "How did you know I was going to come here?" She replied, "Richard called me when you made the appointment." At that moment, Richard Warner, my lawyer, came out into the reception area and invited us both into his office. My anger was simmering beneath the surface, and I said, "No, Richard, we are not going to your office together. You violated my trust by calling Kelly, and I need a straight answer from you right now. Are you going to introduce me? Only me. You know, lawyers are supposed to be smart, but this guy must have had his fair share of brains because he said, 'No, Jack, if this goes on, I'll represent Kelly.' It turned out that he believed that the grain business was a better client for him than my farm. Perhaps this was true because in addition to the grain business, he had all the members of the Gentry family. I had my own opinion on this matter, and I believed that in time he would understand his mistake. "Okay, Richard, please have all my original documents that you have and all copies of contracts and other papers ready by 4:00 p.m. today. I'll either come pick them up or send a courier to pick them up. I want you to know that I appreciate the work you have done for me in the past, but you are making a big mistake, Richard. I will seek legal services elsewhere, and my new lawyer will contact you as soon as possible." Kelly is silentala throughout this entire exchange, but now asks pleadingly, "Jack, why don't you want to talk to me now to clear things up?" Because, Kelly, it's obvious that Richard values you more as a client than he does me, and I'm not going to have this conversation with you without legal representation, and I don't trust him. Richard chimed in, "Jack, you know I've always been honest with you, so you don't have to worry." "Oh, Richard, I have a lot to worry about. You cannot serve two masters, as they say, and it is clear who you chose in this situation. Besides, you already proved that you can't be trusted when you called Kelly here. Goodbye, my lawyer will contact you." I heard Kelly start crying again as I walked out the door. Damn, now I have to find a new lawyer. I knew that David Warner, Richard's brother, was a very capable lawyer and Richard's competitor. I thought it might be a good choice, but didn't want to rush into it without checking. Lawyers, accountants, bankers, and insurance agents are people you need to be very careful with before you get into bed. I realized that the client-lawyer relationship is the most important because it almost always involves confidential information. I knew several people who had used David's services, so I called the law office and asked if they had a list of references. The secretary said they had a list and agreed to email it to me. There were 4 of my friends on the list, so I decided to visit 3 of them and get their thoughts on David's work. It didn't take long because each of the 3 quickly gave me great recommendations for David. I had no doubt that he would handle my situation well. I didn't go to the 4th friend because it was Valley, and I didn't want to involve him since he was married to Amber, Kelly's sister. I called David's office again. I gave my name and asked for an appointment after 4:00 p.m. The receptionist said he was busy until 16:30, but she would check if he could meet me after that. I realized that there was a chance that he would not be able to accept me, but I decided to try. When she came back online, she said that Mr. Warner would indeed be able to meet with me at 4:30 p.m., but the meeting would be short as he had other commitments in the evening. I agreed and said that I would arrive a little earlier than 16:30. She said, "I am waiting for you at this time, Mr. Hagen. By the way, my name is Samantha. I'm David's wife." At 4:00 p.m., I went into Richard's office to pick up my papers, and they weren't all copied yet. It was obvious that they were playing for time, hoping that I would change my mind. I exploded and said I had to have all my legal papers in the next 15 minutes or my new lawyer would contact them. They asked who it would be, and I told them they would find out soon enough. The office was running around like an anthill. I think 3 people were making copies at the same time, and within 20 minutes I had all the papers. I still managed to get to David's office at the appointed time, so I didn't start a scandal because I was a little late. My meeting with David was successful, and he agreed to become my personal and business attorney. I asked him if I could keep all the documents I took in his custody, and he agreed to put them in his safe until we sorted things out. We made an appointment for the next day, Tuesday, at 9 a.m., to review all the documents and develop a plan for my divorce. When I left the office at 5:30 p.m., I smiled at Samantha and asked, "Well, Samantha, am I in trouble, or are your evening plans still in place?" She smiled back at me and said, "You did everything right, Mr. Tays Hagen. Our evening will go according to plan. I wish all our clients were as punctual as you, but please call me Sam." "Thanks, Sam, and you can call me Jack." The next day, David and I reviewed all of my business papers and contracts. I can't discuss it here, attorney-client privilege and all that. All I can say is that David thought everything was fine from a business point of view. We broke the meeting for lunch, and David and Sam invited me to join them at a local diner. I agreed and met them there as I wanted to stop by the bank before resuming the meeting after lunch. They were a charming couple, and we had a very enjoyable lunch. I learned that they were several years older than me. David said he was in the same class as Tom Gentry, but they weren't close. I think they were both too competitive with each other. I learned that they had been married for about 10 years and had 2 daughters, 6 and 3 years old. They showed me photographs, and the girls were very beautiful. They took after my mother, as I could see. Both had beautiful smiles like Sam's. This lunch did me good. He made the transition to my new lawyer much easier. But the negative side of the dinner was that I realized that my life partner was no longer there for me. David and Sam were so amazing together and reminded me of how things were with Kelly before I found out about her cheating. It just made me sad, and I felt my eyes fill with tears a few times. David didn't notice, but I saw that Sam did, and she had a worried look on her face. After lunch, I stopped by the bank and made a few changes to protect my assets. I also took a check for $5,000 made out to the law office of David Warner. It was an advance for work they were going to do for me soon. David hadn't asked for anything yet, but I knew he would appreciate the move. I returned to the office at 1:30 p.m. to continue our meeting. Sam said David was on the phone and led me into the small meeting room where we were holding the meeting. She asked if I wanted coffee or anything, and I said that was fine. She sat down next to me on one of the chairs and extended her hand to me. "David hasn't told me what's going on, Jack, but I can guess what's going on this afternoon based on your reactions at lunch. I see you're wearing a wedding ring, so I'm guessing it has something to do with your wife. If you allow me, I will ask David to let me stay here with you this afternoon while we figure out what you have to tell us." I was on the verge of a breakdown, so I simply nodded in agreement. My anger had temporarily subsided, and the emotions of pain were now stronger. It would be nice to have a woman with her sensitivity around. I realized that I might need her sympathetic presence. During the afternoon meeting, I told the whole story of how I found out about Kelly's affair. I broke down a few times, and Sam stepped in to sympathize and comfort me. As I regained control of my emotions, I communicated my intentions to them. If nothing happens to change my mind, I plan to file for divorce and insist on honoring the terms of the prenuptial agreement. David and I went over the prenuptial agreement in detail. The conditions are something like this. I retain 100% of all farm assets, real estate, and personal property. Kelly retains 100% of the grain assets business. Kelly receives 50% of our financial assets if there was no cheating, if there was betrayal. Kelly only gets $25,000 for each year of marriage, not 50%. Jack only gets $25,000 for each year of marriage if he cheated, not 50%. Personal property in the house is divided 5,050 regardless of the circumstances. "Jack, I need to see evidence of infidelity," David said. "No, David, I have evidence, but I won't show it to you now or anyone else unless we are forced to go to court. Then I will show them to the judge." David insisted, "Jack, I need to see them to make sure we have an infidelity case. I need to be sure." "David, you need to trust me. I have proof, but I loved Kelly, and I don't want anyone to see what I saw unless it's absolutely necessary." Sam touched David's hand and nodded in agreement. David reluctantly agreed. Over the next few days, Kelly called me and left messages several times. I have never picked up the phone and deleted messages without listening to them. David called me and said, "We have an appointment for Thursday, you and me, Kelly and Richard." On Thursday at 10:30 a.m., David and I drove to Richard's office to meet him and Kelly. When we arrived, I saw Kelly's car in the parking lot, so we went into the office. Richard's receptionist showed us to a small meeting room where we waited only a couple of minutes before Richard and Kelly entered. Kelly looked much better than when I saw her in Richard's office last week. She obviously got herself dressed up for the meeting because she really looked beautiful. I did my best to hide my feelings because I didn't want her to see how much my heart ached for her. She smiled at me and said, "Jack, I hope we can finally talk and put an end to this misunderstanding. I miss you and want to come home." I didn't answer her because I felt that my voice would waver if I said anything at that moment. I needed to get my emotions under control. It wasn't easy, but I had to do it. David spoke up. "We're here to discuss the dissolution of Jack and Kelly's marriage. I think we need to start the discussion by giving each side the opportunity to express their thoughts and opinions on how this young couple can move forward in their lives." Richard nodded and interjected, "My client believes this is a complete misunderstanding and welcomes the opportunity to clarify the situation and talk to her husband." I had a hard time controlling my emotions, but Richard did me a big favor. It had reignited my anger, and now it was on the verge of boiling. I knew I could control my anger, and this made it easier to control my emotions, pain, and disappointment in Kelly. "I can handle it." I said, "That suits me, Richard. Your client can talk to her husband." I looked at Kelly and said, "Kelly, here are some facts. When we got married, we signed a prenuptial agreement and changed it 2 years ago when you bought a share of your father's business. I brought copies of the amended contract for everyone to see." Kelly looked a little taken aback. She said quietly, "But Jack, I don't want a divorce. I want to be your wife. Why can't we just get over this misunderstanding and go home and be happy again?" I practically ignored her comment and continued, "Our goal was to protect individual interests while enjoying the benefits of our marriage. The prenuptial agreement was originally created to protect assets that had been in my family for generations. Then, when you bought a share of your father's business, it was also changed to protect your family's long-term assets. In the event of a divorce, our contract clearly states that I keep 100% of my family's assets, and you keep 100% of your family's assets. All debts associated with these assets will belong to the business, and the other party will not be liable. Because we work together to build our marital assets, our contract provides for certain distributions of money and property based on the circumstances of the divorce. As can be seen from this document, you have the right to all your personal belongings, including clothes, jewelry, a car, and other items that a man is not interested in. Likewise, I have the same right on my side. All other non-farm personal items such as furniture, artwork, electronics, etc., should be divided in half. Personal farm belongings such as grain silos, machinery, and equipment remain entirely mine, as they are an integral part of farming operations. The monetary distribution for you in case of divorce is 50% of financial assets, if there was no infidelity. There are 2 exceptions to this distribution in the case of treason, as can be seen in the document. If you divorce me because of infidelity, the distribution will be such that I will only receive $25,000 for each year of marriage, not 50%. If I divorce you because of infidelity, the distribution will be such that you will only receive $25,000 for each year of marriage, not 50%. I'll ask you a few questions, Kelly. Your answers to these questions will determine whether I seek a divorce and on what grounds. Obviously, this will also determine the outcome of any monetary distribution. If our marriage is to have any chance of surviving, Kelly, you must answer every question with complete honesty. If you refuse to answer, or I catch you in a lie, that's the end. Do you understand this? Are you ready to do this for a chance to save our marriage? Kelly sat there, looking completely dumbfounded when I told her about our prenuptial agreement. She quickly woke up and replied, "Yes, Jack, I will answer your questions and answer honestly. I love you and I want our marriage to survive. I will do anything for you to stop this and let me return home." Kelly, I would like to tape these questions. Is this acceptable to you? This time she hesitated a little and turned to Richard, who until that moment had been practically silent. Richard, as befits a lawyer, said, "Kelly, I wouldn't recommend doing this, but you do what you think is best." At this point, my lawyer, David, intervened. "Well, Kelly, I agree with Richard, and I wouldn't advise you or my client to write this down. But it's Jack who needs to be convinced, not Richard or me, so do what you think is right." Kelly said, "I'll do anything to get over this misunderstanding, so yeah, write it down. I agree to have any conversation between me and Jack recorded." David and I brought a tape recorder and placed it on the table so that all the voices were recorded. Kelly asked, "Jack, what questions do you have?" "Kelly, I want to ask you if you have been faithful to me, but I want to ask this question in 3 different time periods. The first period is from the day we vowed to be exclusive to each other until the day we got engaged. Were you faithful to me during this period?" Kelly smiled and said, "Yes, Jack, I was faithful to you during this period." She thought she was scoring points, but her smile quickly turned to shock when I said, "Well, that's lie number 1. You couldn't even answer the first question honestly. I should get up and leave now, but I won't just yet. Are you saying you didn't have fun with Larry Evendale 2 days after we vowed to be exclusive to each other? Is that what you mean? Larry was the kind of guy, Kelly, he needed to brag, and he actually bragged to me that you invited him over to your house on a Tuesday night when your parents weren't home. His parting line before he left was, 'Jack, she really loved it, and I'm sure I'll have many repeat performances in the future, maybe even after you've married her.' Now you can probably tell that he made it all up, but strangely, Amber was nearby and overheard it all. She came up to me after Larry left and said, 'Jack, Kelly loves you, and she won't cheat on you again.' She simply said goodbye to Larry. Please don't do anything stupid." So you see, Kelly, you already lied to me, but I can understand why you did it, even if I hated it. I forgive you for this lie, but there will be no more forgiveness. From now on, tell the truth or face the consequences. I didn't trust you after that event, so I watched you like a hawk for the next 6 months. In all these 6 months, you didn't do anything suspicious, and I proposed to you and gave you the ring that is now on your finger. I knew you were probably hoping it would happen faster, but I wasn't ready to trust you, so you had to wait. Question #2. During our engagement, from the day you received the ring until our wedding day, did you cheat on me, Kelly? She didn't hesitate for a second, saying, "No, absolutely not." I knew what her answer would be, so I said, "Well, I know it's true because, you see, I still didn't trust you completely, so I kept following you all this year until I felt like I could trust you. I was almost sure that you were faithful to me during this period." Richard, to his credit, asked for a break. He wanted to talk to his client and give her time to collect her thoughts. He noticed, as I did, that during my story about Larry Evendale, Kelly had a strong emotional reaction and was on the verge of a breakdown. He wanted to give her a chance to calm down before continuing. We did take a lunch break, and David and I drove to his office, picked up Sam, and went to a local diner for the daily special. Sam asked how things were going, and David said, "I think Jack is doing well. Not much has come out yet, but it has laid the groundwork for an honest answer to questions about the marriage period. If she admits everything, he may still want a divorce, but he may also see that she really wants to save their marriage. It will be a difficult decision, but I think he can make it. Of course, if she lies, Then Jack will have to decide what to do next. Sam looked at me and her feminine intuition kicked in, and I knew she saw my pain. I smiled faintly and said, "This is very difficult. Why do people do such stupid things and cause so much pain in their lives and in the lives of those they love?" She put her hand on mine and said, "If we had known, Jack, we could have slapped them before they could do such a stupid thing." Of course, this made me laugh, as did David. Even during this difficult time, I could laugh. I think this is a testament to the resilience of humanity. People cry at funerals, but they also laugh. I think people cry during divorces, but they can laugh too. I smiled at Sam and said, "Thanks, Sam, I really needed that." She simply nodded. A little after 1 p.m., we returned to Richard's office and met with Kelly. Before asking the next question, I reminded Kelly, "You need to answer these questions with complete honesty. If you lie about anything, it will be the end of this meeting and no hope for our marriage. Do you understand this?" Kelly said, "Yes, I understand, and I will tell the truth." "Kelly," I asked, "from the time we got married until now, have you ever cheated on me?" I saw tears building up in her eyes, and I felt so sorry for her because I knew how painful this must be for her, but I couldn't console her or let her off the hook. I needed her to care enough about our marriage to come clean. I didn't know if I could stop this divorce if she told the whole truth. But I would know that if she told the whole truth, she would care enough to try to save our marriage. "Yes, Jack, I cheated on you," she replied. She laid her head down on her folded arms on the table and just sobbed. "I'm so sorry, Jack. Can you forgive me?" I asked Richard and David to leave the room because I had a few more questions for Kelly, and I didn't want to embarrass her in front of these men. They both objected, but I insisted that David leave, and Kelly nodded to Richard that she wanted him to leave too. I had her admitting to cheating on tape. That was all I needed for the trial, and I didn't want the rest of the questions and her answers on the tape, so I turned it off. "Kelly, answer these questions. When, where, who, and why?" She sobbed several times. "Oh, Jack, I'm so sorry. It happened this weekend at the Princess Spa. One of the massage therapists is the one with whom I cheated. I don't know exactly why it happened, Jack. I think it was just the passions of the moment that came first. Amber and I enjoyed the day so much, and after a wonderful dinner, we both decided to get a massage before bed. My massage therapist was Mario. I was lying on the massage table on my stomach. Mario started the massage, and it felt so good. His hands were soft but strong. He massaged the muscles of my arms, shoulders, and back. He massaged my legs from bottom to top. He even massaged the inside of my thigh, but stopped without moving on, if you know what I mean. Then he started massaging my back and shoulders again because they were still tight. I felt him untied my bikini top and took it off. I was still lying on my stomach, so I didn't worry until I felt his fingers caressing the sides of my breasts. I have to admit, it felt good, and I didn't do anything to stop it. At that moment, I had no idea that I would get into trouble. With these words, she began to cry again. "Oh, Jack, if I could go back, I would never have let this happen, and we wouldn't be where we are now. You have to believe me." Although it was hard for me to hear all this, I wanted to hear her story. Not out of lust or desire to get turned on, but because I wanted to know what she would tell me. "Go on, Kelly, tell me more." After he caressed my breasts, I felt his lips on my back, and it started to light a fire inside me. "Oh God, Jack, I'm so sorry, and I don't know what to say, but please forgive me. Please." I sat there for a moment, hoping she would continue, but she didn't say another word, just sat there with her head down and sobbing. Finally, she raised her head and looked at me with a questioning look. "Jack, is there any hope that you will forgive me?" I didn't want to make it sound like we were in court, but in fact we were, so I asked her, "Kelly, is this true? The whole truth and nothing but the truth?" She looked at me with what I would describe as a strange look. It was a look of amazement. There was a question in it, but she couldn't ask it. It was that, "I wonder how much he knows" look. Finally, she said, "Yes, Jack, that's what happened. I am so sorry. My heart was breaking at that moment, and against all odds, I was able to hide both the pain of her betrayal and the anger at her lies and maintain my composure. I stood up from the table, walked to the door, and called David and Richard back into the room. I looked at both men and said, "This meeting is over." With that, I walked to the door and turned, "Kelly, I'm filing for divorce on the grounds of infidelity. The terms of the marriage contract will be fulfilled." She was shocked and asked, "But why, Jack? I confessed to cheating, and I beg you to forgive me and continue our marriage. Please, Jack, please. I love you so much. Please forgive me." "Kelly, you lied to me. You didn't care enough about our marriage to tell it like it is. If you had done that, I'm not sure I could have stayed with you, but you didn't even give us a chance. You were in control and you lied. I know you cheated more than once and I have proof. I warned you that you had to tell the truth, and you didn't care about me or our marriage to do so. This is the end." I turned around again, opened the door, and started to go out. She screamed, "Wait, Jack, I'll tell you everything, everything you want to know. Please do not leave me." I turned again and looked at her with all the pain and anger I could muster and blurted out, "You were warned, you had your chance, and you thought you could get away with one episode, so you lied. You had your chance, Kelly." And I shouted at her, "This is the end." David hurried after me and finally caught up with me as I was getting into my car. He grabbed my hand and asked, "Do you really want to file for divorce due to infidelity?" "Yes, I do. She had a chance. Somehow I must have misjudged her all these years. I wanted her to care enough to confess everything, but she couldn't even be honest with me now. Submit your documents." I drove to our house, now my house, and grabbed a beer from the refrigerator. In fact, I took two and went to my office, sat down at the table, and almost drank the first one in one gulp. Then I drank the second one slowly, sitting and thinking about what had happened. I had several copies of the downloaded videos hidden in safe places, but I didn't think I would have to make them public because I had her confession. My head snapped up when I realized I had left the office without a note. I quickly called David and said, "It's Jack. Did you take the tape of Kelly's confession before you ran after me?" "Oh, hell," I heard him say. "No, Jack, I didn't take it. I hurried after you to catch up and completely forgot about the recording. I'm so sorry, Jack. I was so careful in my plans, and then, because I was hurt and angry at the same time, I ruined everything by running out of the office without an appointment. Crap. Well, David, why don't you call Richard and try to pick her up? But my prediction is that their response will be something like, 'We thought you had everything you needed when you left, so we just erased everything, sorry.' I'll be shocked if you actually get it. But don't worry even if you don't get it, because I have enough evidence to file for divorce on the grounds of infidelity." "Okay, buddy, I'm sorry. I know you didn't want to use the video, and now you may have to if she fights accusations of infidelity. Don't worry, David, everything will work out." After calling David, I went to the refrigerator and grabbed another beer. Damn, how could I be so stupid? I wasn't drunk, but I didn't feel great as I sat and watched the evening news before going to bed. I thought I heard a car pull into the yard, so I slowly got up from my chair and walked to the back door. I went out onto the porch and saw a dark silhouette, and at that moment the light went out. Something hit me on the back of my head, and I saw a blinding light, and then plunged into complete darkness. Beep, beep, beep. That's what I heard. It didn't take me long to realize that the sound was right next to me. I opened my eyes and tried to turn my head to the right to see what it was when a terrible pain shot through me. I thought my chest was going to explode, and the pain shot straight to my head, creating flashes of blue and silver light. What the hell, I thought. I heard a slight rustling nearby and felt something flowing into my body, and I lost consciousness again. The next time I heard a beeping sound, I opened my eyes and looked around as best I could without moving. I learned my lesson the first time. I saw a nurse sitting on a chair next to me. I tried to turn my head again, slowly this time, but I couldn't. "Hi, Jack. My name is Susan, and I'm your nurse. Please don't try to move, okay? Everything will be fine. I will explain everything to you, but please lie still. You understood me. It felt like there was a tube in my mouth, but I was able to nod my head a little, so I nodded in agreement. Jack, I need to go and tell the doctor that you've regained consciousness and we'll be back soon, okay? Again, I nodded that I understood. It finally dawned on me that I must be injured and in the hospital, but I could not remember anything about how it happened. I think someone will explain everything to me eventually, so I just lay there with my eyes closed until I heard them approach me again. Mr. Benenhagen, Jack, I'm Dr. Fajula Mustache. You have several serious injuries as a result of an attack during a robbery at your home. Now that you have regained consciousness, I am sure that you will recover, but you have to be restrained so as not to injure yourself with excessive movements. I'm sure you felt a lot of pain when you tried to move yesterday, right? I had no reason to smile, but I know a small smile appeared on my face as I nodded again in agreement with the pain. Yes, we should have been more proactive about fixing things so you don't have to go through this pain. Sorry, I think we can release the restraint now, Nurse Johnson, but Jack, don't try to do anything on your own just yet, okay? I nodded and also pointed to the tube in my throat. Yes, we can also remove the ventilator. Nurse Johnson will take care of that. The fixation was released and the tube was removed. My throat hurt terribly and I couldn't speak. They gave me a sip of water and after a short time I was able to speak, but my voice was very hoarse and hurt, so I just whispered, "Can someone tell me what happened?" Doctor, Julius said, "Jack, it's 7 a.m., and you've just regained consciousness and come off the ventilator. Your throat will be sore for a few more hours, and we just want you to rest for now. Nurse Johnson will be with you, and after you've had some rest, we'll need to tell the police that you can talk. I'll give you some time to recover before we make this call so you can recover a little, but you'll need to talk to them, and they can tell you everything that happened. I can say that from a medical point of view, you have several serious injuries, including a concussion, 3 broken ribs, and multiple bruises. You also had one of your ribs puncture your lung, which caused it to collapse, but the paramedics were able to resuscitate you in time, and after repairing the damage to your lung, we were able to get it back up and running. You're really lucky, Jack. If you had not been found quickly, you would undoubtedly have died. You were unconscious for 5 days, came to for a couple of minutes yesterday, and passed out again until today. We will watch you closely for a few more days, and then you will probably be able to return home. As promised, I was given the opportunity to rest for the rest of the day, and Nurse Johnson was there the entire time. Every time I moved suddenly, I had severe pain, so I lay pretty still. By evening, I was able to sit up and use the toilet with a lot of help. Susan, Nurse Johnson, and I spent time talking, and I learned that she was 3 years younger than me in school. Her maiden name was Susan Fisk, and she married Chad Johnson, and they had a 3-year-old daughter, Emily. Apparently Chad was like Kelly and cheated on Susan, so she divorced him. I told her what was going on with Kelly, and of course she was very sympathetic. The next morning, 2 detectives, Harold Robbins and Josh Carter, came to see me very early. I asked them to tell me what happened to me before they started asking questions. Detective Robbins said, "Well, apparently it was a robbery that led to the attack on you. The door to your house showed no signs of forced entry, but that was because you walked out onto the porch and the door was already open." He continued, "When we searched the house, we found that several paintings had been removed from the walls. There was an empty valuables box in one of the desk drawers. All the filing cabinets in the office had been searched. Drawers and cupboards in the bedrooms had been rummaged through, and a jewelry box had been rummaged through. The main bedroom was empty. We see signs of a robbery, but we have no idea what was stolen." Detective Carter chimed in. "When you are able to return home, you will need to inspect everything and determine, to the best of your ability, what was stolen. The doctor told us it might take 3 or 4 days before you can go home. At this time, we will take inventory with you and update reports." Robbins took the lead again and said it was time to ask some questions. "What do you remember about the attack and what happened after?" Well, I said, not much, I'm afraid. I had a couple of beers and was watching the evening news when I heard a car drive into the yard. I got up to see what was going on, went out onto the porch and saw someone hiding in the shadows or darkness, and then the lights went out. I don't remember anything other than yesterday. I'm afraid I won't be much help in the investigation. Well, said Robbins, I think we still need to ask you a few questions to help us figure it out. Where was your wife when this happened? My wife and I separated. We're in the middle of a divorce, so I don't actually know where she was during this time, I replied. Tell me, Mr. Hagen, can I call you Jack? Yes, sure. How is your divorce going? Is it friendly, or is there tension between you? I guess I have to say that it's not very friendly. She disputes the grounds on which I plan to file for divorce. And on what grounds are you filing, Jack? I am filing on the grounds of treason. We have a prenuptial agreement, and her share is significantly less under these terms of the divorce, so that's what she's contesting. Well, if I may say so, it gives her plenty of reasons to hurt you. Detective, I added, I just don't believe she would hurt me. I cannot believe this. That's normal, he intervened. We will look into this matter very carefully for a thorough investigation. So are there other people who might have reasons to do this to you? Are there any business relationships that could go awry? Have you ever had conflicts with neighbors or friends, family, or other people? No, I can't remember anything like that. Okay, Jack. I know we'll need to do a full inventory of what was stolen when you can, but there are two things I want to ask now. Did you have cash in the house, perhaps in a valuables box, and how long could it be? Also, did you have other things in the house, including jewelry and works of art, that were of significant value? I'm talking thousands of dollars and more. Yes, there was some cash in the valuables box. I'd say it was about $8,000. I usually keep about $10,000 in cash, but I know I haven't spent much recently, so I'm probably left with about $8,000. There were some nice pieces of jewelry, but maybe only a few over $1,000. Nothing else significant in terms of cost that I can think of right now. I didn't tell them about the hidden safe behind the bookcase because, firstly, the detective didn't mention it, and secondly, I was pretty sure no one had found it and wanted to keep it a secret if possible. Well, Jack, I think that's all for today. If you remember anything, please don't hesitate to call me, and when you're ready to go home, let me know so we can take inventory. If we have any other questions, we will come here or to home if you're there. Over the next 4 days, my condition improved. I slept a lot, but sometimes I sat and talked to Susan. I had several visitors, including Valley, Amber, David, and Sam. Kelly didn't come to see me, and other than Amber, none of her family visited me. I think this is understandable under the circumstances, but I would actually be glad to have a visit. Richard, Kelly's lawyer, came to see me. We had been friends for years before this whole divorce, and I was glad to see him. Everyone said how sorry they were that I was injured and wished me recovery. Both Amber and Sam kissed me on the cheek before leaving, and both had tears in their eyes. During these 4 days, I experienced several difficult moments. Although I slept, sometimes I seemed to have bad dreams. I would wake up in a panic, with my heart racing and tears in my eyes. Several times when I woke up, I didn't immediately realize where I was, but Susan always seemed to be there to calm me down with soft words and touches. At least once I know that I woke up screaming, but I don't remember the bad dreams themselves or the reason for the screams. I later learned that she stayed at the hospital with me, even when she was not on duty, and only went home to shower and change clothes. She said it was because of events in my marriage that were close to her heart, and she wanted to be there for me. I really appreciated it. Dr. Bowes, Julius came and told me that I was being discharged. I was glad about this and immediately began to prepare to leave. Susan helped me get ready and even wheeled me in my wheelchair to the lobby where Valley and Amber were waiting to take me home. She wished me luck and hugged me tightly. I knew she really cared about me and was grateful to her, but my life was a mess, including my marriage and health, so I didn't try to develop any kind of relationship with her. I told her that I would like to call her sometime in the future, and that was that. When I got home, I saw the mess that was still there. Valley and Amber offered to help me get everything in order, but I told them I wanted to leave it as is until I looked it over myself. I promised them that I would call them when I was ready. They reluctantly agreed and left me alone. The first thing I did was go into the office and check the safe behind the bookcase. Everything was there, including a fairly large amount of cash, certificates of deposit, and stocks and bonds. It was obvious that no one had found the safe, otherwise these items would also have been stolen. The DVD of Kelly's Infidelity was also there. I looked around the rest of the office, and other than cash, my laptop, and a few numbered wildlife prints from Terry Redlin, nothing seemed to be missing. I noticed that bank and credit card statements were spread out on the table, so I'm sure someone had looked at them. I called my bank and credit card company and alerted them that my account numbers may have been compromised and asked them to be on the lookout for suspicious activity. After a couple of weeks, the investigation into the robbery and assault was slow because the police had no hard evidence to link to anyone. Detectives Robbins and Carter have updated me frequently on the status of their work, but so far no new leads have emerged. They mentioned that since nothing of value was stolen, it was impossible to trace items through fencers, resellers of stolen goods, as is sometimes done in crimes. In the last call, they said that the case would be shelved unless significant evidence emerged. In the early stages of the investigation, they asked serious questions about Kelly and me. I was open and honest with them most of the time. One thing I was very sure of was that Kelly couldn't hurt me, and why would she steal things that she would get in a divorce? I think the detectives agreed with that reasoning, and that was the end of the matter with Kelly. I opened new bank accounts and ordered new checks because I felt my old accounts might have been compromised. Luckily, there was no activity that I couldn't explain, but I still felt safe opening new accounts. I bought a new laptop and organized everything in the office. I was back in business. I sat down to pay some bills that had accumulated while I was unconscious and came across a bill from Red's Inc. A light bulb went on in my head. RED stands for Remote Electronic Data Storage Solutions. I had a video surveillance system for my yard. It covered the house, granaries, and engine shed. The video stream went to a computer in my grain office next to the grain dryer. Each evening this stream was uploaded to Dress as a backup of the data. They stored it, and I paid a monthly fee based on the amount of data. Every month I went in and deleted the oldest data to keep the contributions manageable. I haven't deleted anything since the robbery. I had a video. I immediately went to the Red's website and selected the day of the robbery from the archives and downloaded the entire day onto my laptop to view it. I hoped the quality would be good enough to identify who attacked and robbed me. If it's good, I'll copy it onto DVD and give it to Detectives Robbins and Carter. This will kickstart the investigation again. As I scanned the day, I realized that there was nothing there that I could give to the detectives, and now I knew that they would never solve this crime. The rest of the bills were paid, and I began to plan how I would move forward with my life. I decided to contact an old friend from college who worked for Cargill, one of the largest grain traders in the U.S. Through him, I arranged a meeting with those responsible for acquisitions in their company. It's amazing how personal connections can speed things up. About 2 weeks later, I finalized my plans with Cargill and headed to Las Vegas. I ended up flying to Phoenix on business and then going to Vegas to do some gambling. 2 days later, I returned home and began to implement all my plans. I called David and asked him to contact Gentry Grain to set up an appointment for me with Kelly, her brothers Tom and Carl, and her sister Amber. I told him that he should mention that with the upcoming divorce, the grain reserves required by the state would no longer be sufficient because they would not be able to include my grain stored there. I asked David to tell them that I wanted to sit down and discuss the situation with them and come to some kind of solution. I think David shocked them because they immediately agreed to meet with me. Apparently, they didn't think about what would happen if my grain was no longer included in the calculations. I walked into the office and greeted them. "Hello, Tom, Carl, Amber, Kelly. I think you understand one of the reasons why I felt it necessary to sit down and resolve some issues. Tom started to say something, but I raised my hand and said, I think I initiated this meeting, and I suggest you all just sit here and listen to what I have to say before you make any comments. Frankly, I think it would be in everyone's best interest. First, I would like to close the divorce issue, if possible. Sorry for the sarcasm, Kelly. I placed the final draft of the divorce papers in front of Kelly and said, Please sign. She said, Jack, I don't want a divorce. Whatever you think I did, it's not worth throwing away all the good years we spent together. I hope you can forgive me and sort out our problems. I certainly don't want to discuss this here in front of my brothers and sister. Kelly, we'll wrap this up now. There is no tomorrow for our marriage, and the sooner you sign these papers, the faster we can move on. Her face turned red, and she blurted out, Well, if you insist on divorce, I will still fight the accusation of infidelity. It's the least you can do for me. I knew that she would take this step, but I was, of course, ready for it. If you decide to fight me over the infidelity charge, Kelly, I will have no choice but to present this DVD as evidence in court. And I threw a copy of the DVD on the table along with the divorce papers. If you're wondering what this is, it's a video of all 8, yes, I said 8, times you cheated on me at the spa. Amber's face turned red, and she glared at Kelly. You didn't do this? Kelly, how could you? You told me that you did the same thing as me when they approached you and rejected them. How could you do this to Jack? Yes, Amber, she did it. Sign the divorce papers now, Kelly, or I'll go to court with this. I'm not going to bother with you anymore. I saw that Tom and Carl were also in shock, and Amber was silently crying while Kelly signed the divorce papers. I left her one copy and put the rest in my briefcase. Kelly had a numb look on her face and tears in her eyes. I don't know why, but it didn't matter. I could see that she was shocked that I had evidence of multiple infidelities, but that was not all. Now let us move on to another question concerning grain. I can see that you are all shocked by what I just told you, so I will try to put it out quickly, but unfortunately, it will make things worse. The bad news is that with this scam, you will no longer have my grain in your inventory, and you will be in violation of the terms of your grain storage license and credit agreements. The good news is that I approached your father and presented my business to him, and he agreed to sell me his 52% stake in the business. There was no first right of repurchase clause in your agreement with him, so apparently Richard didn't do the best job for you in the purchase. I didn't show him the evidence of your infidelity, Kelly, but he believed I had it, so it was an obvious decision for him. He knew the company would be in trouble without my input, so he sold me his shares, and I am now the majority shareholder of Gentry Grain, Inc. You each have 12%, and collectively you are in the minority with 48%. The bad news is that I have agreed to sell my majority stake to Cargill. They are always looking for up-and-coming grain companies, and Gentry Grain fits their bill perfectly at the right price. The good news is that you have the option to sell your shares to them at the same price that I agreed with them. I recommend that you do this. I negotiated a very good price. The bad news is that your company is now owned by others, and they will evaluate the staff to determine who adds value to the company. The good news is that under the terms of my negotiations, you each have a 1-year job guarantee. During this time, I strongly encourage you to work as hard as you can to prove to them that you are a valuable employee. Just so you know, I also sold my farm to them, and Valley sold his farm to them too. Valley has signed a long-term contract with Cargill to manage both farms, and we all know what a great job he does and will continue to do for them. The shock on their faces intensified, and hints of rage appeared. Tom, being the eldest and unofficial leader of the Gentry clan, spoke first. What the hell have you done, Jack? You ruined this family business because my sister cheated on you. What kind of person are you anyway? How did you convince my father to sell his shares to you? What lies did you tell him? I'll tell you, Tom, I said. First of all, your father sold me his shares so they wouldn't put you in jail. Carl in jail, and Kelly in jail. You ask what kind of person I am, but it would be better to ask yourself what kind of person you are, what kind of person Carl is, and what kind of woman Kelly is. I threw the second DVD on the table. I think this video will give you all the answers to why this is all happening. It clearly shows your pickup truck in my yard the night I was beaten. It clearly shows how you and Carl attacked me. It clearly shows you leaving my house with my things. Consider yourself lucky that I chose this path of revenge, rather than handing it over to Detectives Robbins and Carter. Kelly finally spoke. Jack, how could you do this to me? Kelly, you are a special case. With you, I feel like I wasted my whole life. Your father always treated my father well enough, but always a little like a second-class, stupid farmer. Tom and Carl treated me much the same way, always thinking you were too good for me. You were my best friend, but you also considered yourself better than me in many ways. I've always felt that way. You were a deceitful lover. You promised to be exclusive with me and immediately slept with Larry Evendale. You were a cheating wife, disrespecting me and our marriage by having fun with these men. When you watch this video, remember that I saw every second and heard every word. And worst of all, Kelly, you're a terrible best friend. You know, I almost died as a result of the attack. One of my broken ribs punctured my lung and it collapsed. If the paramedics had not arrived in time, I would have died. It's interesting that Tom and Carl broke the ribs, but it was your boot kick that drove the broken rib into my lung. You, Kelly, almost killed the man you say you love so much. I'd call that being a pretty bad friend, wouldn't you? Kelly fainted. Amber and Carl rushed over to catch her before she fell out of her chair. Amber then went to get a cold washcloth to help revive her. When she regained consciousness, I struck the final blow. So now you know, your father sold his shares to me to keep you 3 out of jail. He's not very proud of his kids, you know, except for you, Amber, and I'm sure you'll hear more about that in the future. Like I said, I believe I spent most of my life on you, Kelly, but I'm not going to waste my future on this anymore. Have a good life. With these words, I walked out the door with all the deals in hand. I was free to move on, and that's what I will do. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.